All right, folks. Hey, welcome back to the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast. Hey, we've been rocking and rolling. Kangaroo Leadership Podcast is named because kangaroos only can physically move forward, and we only bring people to you that are moving forward. Uh, sometimes I do these by myself, not very often. A lot of times I'm bringing you people from, I don't know, England and New Jersey and all over the place. And sometimes we have people that I know on here. And so today I've got Bill with me, and Bill and I have known each other for a while. We've crisscrossed paths, not the same exact passion, but we've crisscrossed paths because we have a calling. And sometimes when you have a calling, you get people in your life that help with that. And so Bill's got a lot of really cool stuff going on. But I will tell you, some of us think the crux of all evil is money, and sometimes that can be a little bit crippling in our lives. And sometimes it's all consuming. It's consuming from the time you go to sleep to the time you wake up. How am I going to pay my bills? What's next? Do I get a new car? Do I not get a new car? How do I work things? Kids' college, or basically just having enough in the fridge to feed the family. And so we all wish we had tools. Well, Bill's taken that about 3 or 4 levels higher. He's got a heck of a story. I'm going to let him tell you, and he's on a mission. And I want you to share his mission, and I want you to participate in it. And at the end, I really hope that you develop a relationship with Bill, at least at some level, to help him help you. And we're going to talk about some veteran stuff, and we're going to talk about callings and which direction the Lord's put all of us on, and why we do things. So, without further ado, hey Bill, it's on you. Start where when the earth cooled and get us to today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Dave. I appreciate it. Yeah, we've known each other a couple of years now and had some wonderful conversations. We're both on kind of missions to help people. My mission happens to be on the financial side. I've got 38 years, 39 years in the financial world. Yeah, like you, I was called. So I got hit over the head in January of 2022. And the good Lord looked at me and said, I need you to do this for me. And what he didn't do is he didn't tell me how to do it. It wasn't as clear as I would have hoped for. So I spent a couple of years trying to one angle of what I thought could be done in teaching financial literacy. It didn't work out. So like many people and entrepreneurs, you have to pivot. And I pivoted, and we turns out I became much like you and wrote a book. And I mean, at this today, we'd say, who'd have thought? It was never on my bucket list, but I had to write a book, and I had to make it streetwise, down to a level about money and how money controls us. And I don't know of anybody that can say money doesn't control me. It affects all. It doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter how much you have.
Expound on that. So take people to reality. Tell them what they're thinking and what they know. They just don't want to admit it.
So ask a question. How much money did you spend last month?
I do know, but I'm probably the odd one, right?
Yeah, you're the one percenter, I would say. We don't keep very good track of our money. We don't keep track of how we spend it, what triggers us to spend it. We live 70 to 80% of the people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. Uh-huh. And that's because we're taught from day one in life to spend. We are consumers in America. We love to consume, and we overconsume. In my neighborhood, we have 3-car garages, and yet many people can't even get a car in the garage because they have so much stuff. They say rich people buy time, poor people buy stuff. And so the reason why we do this, Dave, is in a large part for perception. We want to be perceived to be smarter and to look like we're wealthier than we are. That's why we drive the cars we drive, the clothes we wear, the jewelry we wear. We look at the brand names, got a Dolce & Gabbana bag, the Rolex watch, that drives a Corvette or a Porsche, things of that nature. And we often confuse money with intelligence. So a lot of people think the more money you have, well, he must be really smart. Has nothing to do with money. It really doesn't. I know people, I spent 20 years in the trading pits of Chicago. And I was in the world's largest trading pit for 16 years. I knew people in that pit that were not the brightest bulbs in the pack, but made tons of money. And I knew people that had PhDs that couldn't make a dime. So that has never equated for me how money ties to intelligence. But yet that's kind of what we do. And why do we do it? Because we're judging people. And please don't say you don't judge people. Everybody judges everybody else. And we don't get to know people, so all we have is how do they look? What clothes are they wearing? What cars they drive? What house do they live in? What neighborhood they live in? You know, the funny part about money is money doesn't care about anything. It doesn't care about who you are, what color you are, what gender you are, what religion you are, what house you live in, what clothes you wear, what car you drive. It doesn't care even about other money. And in part, don't we always love to chase after what doesn't want us? So it makes it even more hungry. The interesting thing is it's, at least through my generation, it's been taboo to talk about money. Not supposed to do it. Don't talk to your coworkers about how much you make. It's looked down upon. And on top of that, if you're not supposed to talk about it and you don't know anything about it, who talks about subjects they don't know anything about? Nobody. I was a financial advisor for about 8-9 years once I got out of the pits. And one thing I learned about spouses was they typically don't talk about two things, money and sex. And I used to laugh saying, well, I'm here to help you with one of those. But the reality is if you're not talking about it, then you're not talking to your children about it. So it just becomes perpetual, right? We go generation to generation. We shelter our kids through school. Then we put them, we try to put them in the best schools we can and say we sacrificed and we ate ramen noodles every night so you could go to the best schools. And then what does that kid do? That kid grows up and does the same thing. But if you ask your parents, why did you do that? They'll say, because we wanted you to have a better life. And yet you live the same way. Then you go through the trials and turmoils of raising your child and putting them through the best schools and such. But once they get through college, we slap them on the back and say, hey, good luck. Have at it. And you send a kid off into the world who's in debt, most likely, has zero knowledge about money, probably hasn't ever really made a lot of money other than, slinging burgers or, working in the cafeteria or something at school. And we've sheltered them. And then we send them off into the real world and we have these great expectations.
Tell me about the difference between sending off a child into the world in debt and not in debt, and how that affects their decision making in their early lives, relationships, children, jobs, all that.
Yeah, great question. It's what happens is if you're in debt, and I've experienced this even with my own children, and when you come out of college, you're in debt, all you can think about is, I've got this big bill I've got to pay every month. Well, what does that affect you? Well, it affects where you can live, where you can afford to live. What kind of apartment can you rent? Or God forbid you even think about buying a home that early. You have to go out and find that job, right? That's the first on everybody's mind. I got to get a job. I don't want to move home. And quite honestly, mom and dad probably says, I don't want you to move home either. It's time to leave the nest. But so right away, money starts controlling us immediately. And what do? We go look for that best job that we can find to make the most money we can find so that we can start paying these bills and I can start living a better life.
Is it fair to say that we take jobs that don't necessarily make us happy or that we enjoy, but it's based on the number?
I would say quite often people will take jobs just for the simple fact that it's offered. Somebody wants me. That's huge. You want to be wanted and accepted. So, it's not everybody is in the same boat, right? You know that. And not everybody, like I said, how much did you spend last month? Well, Dave, but not everybody does. So there's, I don't call them one-offs so much, but let's just say when I speak, I speak in generalities for a general large portion of the society. But imagine coming out of school and now you've got, whether it's $25,000 or $250,000 in debt, depending upon what you went to school for. Because here's a really funny statistic for you. The middle class thinks that it is important for you to continue school. They believe that getting a master's and getting a PhD will put you in a better position in life and be able to make more money. And if you look at the numbers nowadays, it's not true. I know there are plumbers and electricians and such that they don't go to college, they go to work. And in 4 years, they're buying a home and they're making decent money.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are, you just finished your undergraduate.
Mm-hmm.
So you wind up going to school longer, rack up more debt, and have less time to pay it back once you get out. Doesn't sound like a really good equation.
So I'll interject here. So if you're a parent and you grew up in this cycle that you just described, and your parents ate ramen noodles for 20 years to put you through the finest schools, and now you've got your bachelor's degree and you're out in the world and you have kids. Listen to me, folks. And you have kids. It's okay to look them in the eye and tell them it's okay to go in the military. It's okay to go to welding school. It's okay to be a plumber. It's okay. The only thing that will hold those kids back is the fact that you say something like, why would you ever want to be a plumber?
Yeah.
Because now you've cut off half of their possibilities in life to include being in a financial situation that opens a whole bunch of other doors. Bill, it's kind of funny you brought that up. When I was going in the military, I wanted to be a plumber. I want to go in the Navy and be a plumber. I want to be a Seabee. The reason was because I had a cousin that was a plumber down in fact, I'm going to a baseball game with him in August. He's about 12 years older than I am. He was a plumber in the Bay Area and he made bank. He was doing really good. And I was a farm kid, so I could do that, right? Well, I grew up in an environment where nobody had an education. So anything about education was just silly, stupid, and expensive. So you better figure out something else, right? So that's away from me. So talk to me. So along those veins, you said a couple of things. One is we all judge, which there's only one entity that actually passes final judgment. I call that a gap. I call that the gap of assumption and bias. And when we live in a gap of assumption and bias, right, it drives our actions financially, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like the Homer Simpson show. I don't know if you ever watched Simpsons, but on the Simpsons, there's that episode where the neighbor buys the Goliath and it's a motorhome. And Homer has to go buy the behemoth, right? And they go through the whole thing, and inevitably it doesn't fit in his driveway. He doesn't know how to use it. He wrecks it like on the first day he gets it, and his wife's all over him because now they can't pay the mortgage.
Yep. We do that. We do that to ourselves. We spend so much money. Not only do we spend all the money we make, but we spend more because we use the credit cards. Our own country has a huge debt. Right now, Dave, we have the largest credit card debt in the history of credit cards at the highest interest rate ever.
You know why I sleep good at night, Bill? Because I don't have any credit. I don't. No, I pay. I have them. I have a lot of credit cards that I've accumulated over the years. Yeah. And I can tell you, there's a drawer behind me here that they're all in there. And every once in a while, I pull it out to keep it relevant, and I spend a little bit on it, and then I put it away. But folks, I'm weird. I pay my credit card bills every morning before I get out of bed. I punch those buttons on my phone, and I clean up the $20 here and the $30 there. And it's by the time I get out of bed, it is zero. I don't carry that weight around with me all day. I'm done.
But Dave, you were trained, right?
Well, I made a lot of mistakes.
We learn from our mistakes. What's really interesting and talk about learning from mistakes. Look at these commercials that say, in too much debt, or, it's going to take me 59 years to pay this off. And I'm looking at them, go, what idiot gets in that deep? And then what do? You go and you negotiate it down. Instead of owing 60,000, we negotiate it down to 20,000. The guy pays it off, a couple of years or whatever, and feels what relief. But 2 years later, it's right back at it.
Talk to me about that, because this is really the crux of your work, right? Yeah. It's discipline. You already said discipline, number one, right? It's respect for the money, which is number two, right? You have to respect what money does to you. The appetite. It's your appetite. Talk about that, because I think this is fascinating.
What triggers you? So one of the things in my book, I don't talk about what to do with every dollar. I talk about our mindset. And part of what our mindset is what triggers us to spend our money. And it's impulsive things, right? We see them all the time. We look, all you got to do is say, I'm looking for a mattress. And next thing you know, on your phone, in your emails, in your texts, in your social media is going to be showing you mattresses.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yes, everybody's listening. And then once we get it locked in our head that, an example here, when I was much younger, I sold cars very briefly. And one thing a manager taught me was when anybody who shows up at a dealership looking at a car, they're going to buy one within 48 hours. That's what the statistics were saying at the time. He goes, so why don't you be the one to sell the car? And that made a lot of sense. It's like, you're going to buy a car anyway. I'm going to do everything I can to be the one to sell it to you. But that's the mindset of the people coming in. They've already made their mind up that they're going to buy that car. We have the commercials that tell us, you better get in here by June 2nd to buy this car because otherwise tariffs are going to raise prices on cars.
Fear.
So that's a tactic, right? That's the fear tactic. Get in here or get down here to buy a car before the color you want, the model you want is already sold or gone. Anything to get people to come in and trigger, that's key. Trigger people to go and spend their money. And it can be for all kinds of things. I go into a certain store and you know what? If you sign up for a credit card today, we'll give you 20% off and you can put it on the credit card. Well, guess what happens? That's awesome. Now I can buy twice as much stuff. Put it all on the credit card. I walk out of here without spending a penny. Mindset. And what happens? You fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
And now you didn't spend money, but you have greater debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's three kinds of debt, right? Or there's three kinds of ways to spend money. We have fixed, our mortgage, our insurance, our car payments. Those are fixed things. We have our variables, our credit cards, our utilities that happen. These are things we know happen every month. Then we have what's left over, and those are the incidentals. That's where you have to be careful with your money. If you start racking up your credit cards, you have less incidentals to spend. But if you're used to spending that much anyway, you're still going to overspend. See what I'm saying? So if you have $300 left over after paying all your bills, well, now you have a credit card that just went up $100 in payment a month. Now you have $200 left over to spend, but you're used to spending $300. So you'll spend the $200 cash and then another $100 on a credit card. And there's your cycle of getting deeper and deeper and deeper in the hole. And money controls you because now everything is about money.
Money will draw you away from the Lord Jesus Christ. Money will ruin your relationships. Money will ruin your when I say your credit, I'm talking about your reputation.
Yeah.
And then money will ultimately, I hate to bring this up, but it's a reality. That when somebody commits suicide, you can get it down to about three things, right? And money is one of them. It's trouble. You're in trouble. You've had a relationship go south, or you're financially in a situation you feel like you can't get out of. That's powerful.
Same thing with divorce. It's number 2 reason for divorces.
It's
infidelity powerful. And financial. And that's why my book says it's easy to control. So why don't we? And we don't because we don't talk about it.
So if I listen to the podcast and I want to run out and buy your book, I want you to do this halfway through. We'll do it at the end too. Want to run out and buy your book? First of all, how do I get it? And second of all, tell us what's in it. Tell us why our mindset of money is this eye opener versus any other financial book out there. What's your calling?
Well, so my calling was not to tell you what to do with your money, how to use your money and things of that nature. My calling is just let's sit down and talk about your mindset on money, your relationship with money. How does it control you? And once you understand how it controls you, you can gain control back. because it's the simple things, all the way down to when you're looking at some clothing or something. I've walked into stores where I had no money, and I walk into a store and everything looks great. I want everything, but I'm broke, so I leave. 2 weeks later, I get a paycheck, and I walk in that same store, and now I'm flush with cash. Nothing looks as good. The lesson I learned from that was take your time. Stop the impulsive buying that you do. Do you really need it? Take control. Do I need that pair of jeans? Well, I already have 5 pairs. Why would I need another pair? Well, because they look great, or they look good on me, or I'll look good at them. We can come up with all kinds of reasons to spend our money. What you have to do is be honest with yourself, and to say, do I really need that? I talk about all kinds of things, everything from how to buy a house. Again, many things are very basic level. My next book will go much deeper into each subject. But, from how to buy a house. Well, you say to the realtor, I can afford $250,000 because the bank says I can. And so a realtor shows you a home for $350,000. You fall in love with that. Now, the realtor is not being a bad person. The realtor is actually trying to say, hey, look, I just want you to set expectations.
Right.
Okay? Because this is what you want, but this is what you can get for your
Right, and a realtor, they already know. They already have got a good enough feeling for what you can afford.
Typically.
I did some math while we were talking here. It's really simple math. I did 7 times 6, which is 42, times 52. You know what that is? That's the average of what people spend at coffee shops daily. $42 a week. So if I told you I'd give you a $2,184 check if you just made coffee at home, would you do it? I did. It's over a year ago, and I said, I'm done. I'm done. Because it's just too easy. I look at it and I think, first of all, the coffee doesn't taste any different. Second of all, why am I in the coffee shop by myself? Right now, if you said, let's go to the coffee shop, I'd be happy to spend that $6 or $7.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do that. But other than that, there's no reason. And if you're in a drive-thru in a coffee shop, shame on you.
Nobody wants to know how much they waste money on. Yeah. Nobody wants to know how much they spent on Starbucks last month. Nobody. That's why we don't do budgets. I said at the beginning of my book, I said, look, I don't, although I provide a budget, this book is not about a budget. This is about seeing where your money is so that you can see how it affects you, how it controls you, so you can make those changes. Nobody wants to know how much they spent at Starbucks last month.
They need to listen to people like you. Everybody, this is what Bill's offering you. And you don't need to have discovery learning late in life. My mother, God rest her soul, was a big smoker her whole life. And then she hit the point where she was having trouble breathing and ended up on oxygen. So she quit. She called me a year later and she said, you know what, Dave? I said, what? She goes, my bank account. And I said, yeah. She goes, I sat here with the checkbook staring at it for 3 days because I thought something was wrong because I had this money that I didn't know where it came from. And she goes, it took me 3 days to figure out that it was cigarettes.
That's the thing.
I watched a guy pay $10.50 for a pack of cigarettes the other day. It blew me away. I was like, wow.
I have no idea, really. That's an expensive habit. Yeah, right?
You're at about $100 a week just in cigarettes.
And then you throw in the coffee shop. So this is all of a sudden, where does our money go? How many times do you ask, where's my money gone?
That is almost, if you throw in the 2 of those, that's $8,000 a year just to smoke and drink coffee.
Right. And so how many hours of work does that take to earn that money? Well, let's say it takes you, if you're even getting paid well, it still takes you a month. That's crazy. You want to work a month just so you can smoke cigarettes and drink coffee.
Yeah. So I'm all, folks, this is me advocating for Bill's work, because what Bill is talking to you about is something that is taboo. He already said it. You don't go to parties. One of the best things I like, I have a place in Arizona, and one of the best things I like it when I'm down there, and we're going to end up down there probably permanently, but One of the best things I like is it's an over 55 community. So all people do is run around celebrating the fact that we can all live in this over 55 community. They don't care about what you did or your bank account. They don't. Some people, I have, Pat, when I retired from the military, I told Pat, I said, for the last 30 years, I've been living in 1,500 square feet. There's no reason for us to have a house bigger than 1,500 square feet. So I go to Arizona, I buy a 1,500 square foot house, and all my friends go, "Oh, you're going to sell this place and get a big one." And I'm like, "No, I am not. I am not. And if I have a big party and there's a bunch of people over here, they can go out in the backyard because the weather's good." You know what? But actually, I watch people do that even in their retirement. They got to have the same size house or bigger, and I'm thinking, why? Live
Well, that's
within your means.
we throughout life we chase the almighty dollar. And one of the things we love are titles. And the corporate world loves to give out titles.
Yeah.
They'll give you titles all day long over money. Because people think, oh, the bigger the title, who isn't a vice president at a bank nowadays? I mean, everybody is, and even the teller. I'm vice president of tellers. But we do these things, and the funny part is when you retire, you're Chief Master Sergeant Dave Nordell on Friday. You retire, and on Saturday, you're Dave.
Yeah.
And people don't get that, and it's a huge letdown in retirement.
Years. I've had to fight, thank the Lord for getting me in the right spot. 10 years of bouncing around with that. And quite frankly, I don't want to get too much into my story. You know it, but I got a lot of baggage from 30 years of military time. But that whole sense of purpose is what you talked about, right? So, am I purposeful and am I worthy? Well, let me look at my bank account, or at least what I get paid every month.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Nobody gets through life unscathed. We all have challenges. Look, I've been in the financial world all my life, and guess what? In the housing bubble, I lost my home. I lost my career of 20 years in 2005, and I was in interest rate futures trading pit, and 1,500 people in that pit. We saw this coming. We saw the housing bubble coming. All right, but dummy me wanted to move from where I lived, which was a wealthy town in North Chicago area, Chicagoland area. I wanted to move out of there. I didn't want to raise my kids in an area that I had to spend $100 every weekend to buy a present for my kids, friend's birthday.
I got it. Yeah.
So we moved a little bit further out into the farmland, and the problem was I built a home. Well, in 2005, that was the worst time in the world to build a home because A, it costs more than buying a regular home, an existing home, and B, you're going to lose value much faster.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's just say within 2 years, a next door neighbor sold their home for about less than a third of what I paid for mine. And these were neighbors that built the same homes, same neighborhood, same costs. They were selling them for a 2/3 less than they paid. And I just threw my hands in the air and said, it's going to take forever for us to get this money back. Who knows how long it will take, but it's going to affect us and our lives for going forward, and the schools our kids can go to and the kind of life we can live. So we gave up the home and moved on. But those are decisions you have to make. Even somebody who's more savvy on finance like myself, you still can get hurt.
But the tipping point is, Bill, is maybe you were so close to finance that you felt like you were ironclad.
I tell you, I thought I was a one real estate genius when I sold that home to buy the new build. Right. I made a ton of money. I made a killing, and I was so excited. In fact, I was in an area where they were tearing down homes and building mini castles, and right. So I sold my home for the highest price ever in that area. And actually, the very next sale of the home was $30,000 less, and then it went down 30,000 more because the bubble.
So you were actually the tip of the
I was the tip of the
graph.
So yeah. You're right. I felt like I felt like I was a rock star, and sure. I could do no wrong. And that's when life can get interesting. when you
Yeah.
feel,
Yeah, you get a little bit blinded. So talk to me about your calling, about where Jesus kind of flipped you on your head and said stop. And because I've got a little insight on the background of where your calling was, how you stepped out, how your family received all of that, and some ripples there, and then how you ended up where you're at, and how you stayed on task because it's so easy to quit.
yeah, yeah, right. So you do know the story a little bit. A calling for me was almost a sledgehammer on the head. It was the last week of January 2022. And the good Lord just said, I was really tired of being a financial advisor and talking to people that didn't understand anything I was helping them do. They'd claim they did. They'd shake their head yes and no and such, but nobody understood. And I got tired of that. And I can't sell and put people into positions that they don't understand what it's for. So I got hit over the head and said, teach financial literacy, because in our world, we have to pick a target market. And so I knew that 26 states had a mandate that juniors and seniors in high school had to have a financial literacy course of some sort to get their diplomas. So I thought, I'm going to build a business. I'm going to put all these classes together, and we're going to sell these classes to all the schools. Great business plan, good stuff. Problem was I reached out to a sheik over in Dubai who I'd done business with when I was in the trading pits as a broker. And I reached out to him to see if he would be willing to lend me the money. And he said yes. And so I proceeded to spend money, starting to build it and such. And I went over to Dubai, and it cost a lot of money. And long story short, it was the email I was using to reach him was hacked years earlier. And I hadn't talked to him in 15 years. And so I was really dealing with the wrong people. And I got taken for a lot of money. I know many people now that have been taken for a lot more. I saw it more quickly than maybe an average person might, but I still got taken for some. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't build that business the way I thought it needed to be built. Like an entrepreneur, you have to pivot. So I pivoted to writing this book. And I told you, like my daughter, when it got published, my daughter's like, "Aren't you celebrating?" I go, "I'm really not. This book to me is a tool. It's a tool to reach and help people, and I'm just a servant. The good Lord brought this book out of me for a purpose that He had. So I don't celebrate that. Last week we won. We got best-selling book. In 3 categories. Again, aren't you going to celebrate? I go, no. Again, this is just another step in the process of me serving. And I was interviewed by the Empowered Entrepreneur magazine, and they asked me, what would you like your legacy to be? I said, well, I can't afford to buy or build a building at a university or build a wing at a hospital. I said, so it'll really have to be what others think. I said, but the only one thing I want people to know is I want my legacy to be I served my calling well. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, I love it. So I looked this up. I knew it was somewhere. Matthew 6:24 says, "No one can serve 2 masters. Either you'll hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." And I think what God's doing is sending you on a mission to relieve people of feeling like they need to serve money so that they can serve Him. And I think that is just fabulous.
I love that.
Well, I mean, but you're saving lives, Bill. Folks, listen to this. Listen to me. You guys all know my background. If you watch the podcast, you've heard me talk about my ins and outs. And if you watch me on podcasts, you've heard me talk about my struggles with a lot of things. And it's just where life put me. My life has been servitude from day one. I mean, I was in healthcare in the military. I've been serving people from day one. It's never been about Dave. When I tried to make it about Dave, it never has worked. Bill stepped into a space that's not only uncomfortable, but it's you almost feel naked. If somebody says how much money's in your bank account, that makes you uncomfortable. Doesn't matter if it's a whole bunch or a little bit. It makes you uncomfortable. And Bill stepped into a space where, in a private way, even with a relationship with him, you get a hold of him, or just through reading his book, in a private way, he can release you from the burden of this waking up in the morning and worrying about money, and going to bed at night and worrying about money. I've been there. I think we all have, Bill. Obviously, you just told the story. You've been there. And there's nothing more miserable than going to bed at night with money on your mind and waking up with money on your mind. And boy, when you clean it up, it gives you the ability to do so much more.
That's
What's
to live
to,
a better life, a healthier
to
life, less stressful, more productive.
tomorrow is my second birthday because 7 years ago tomorrow I almost died. But 7 years ago tomorrow will also be 7 years that I haven't had a drink. When I got alcohol out of my life, the amount of clarity that entered my mind and my daily activities has enabled me to do so much more. And I was a high functioning guy. I mean, I did a lot of stuff. But the Lord, you want to talk about a sledgehammer? The Lord gave me about 100 blood clots in my lungs and said, here's a close call. You need to rethink things. But yeah, so I mean, I'm coming up on that. So folks, you don't need to be in financial despair at a level where you can't get out or you start making really bad decisions. What you need is a new mindset. Bill's offering that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the hard part is when people say, well, who's the book for? There's something in it for almost everyone of every culture, gender, country. I was playing golf the other day with an old friend of mine from the trading pits, Mr. Takamura, and he took one look at the book and he said, "Is this in Japan?" And I'm like, "Well, not right now." And he's like, "This book would go crazy in Japan." And I get it because I managed a Japanese brokerage operation for 7 years. I understand their
Right,
relationship with money.
right,
And
right.
different cultures have different types of relationships. I've done virtual conferences globally teaching this. South America, South Africa, Philippines, where we bus people in and we teach them for free how to build businesses and how to handle money. And these are mostly underprivileged folks, and they just absorb it. It's unbelievable to see the excitement in many of these people and how they gravitate towards this. Um, so there is no one target market for this book. There's something in it for almost everyone.
I love that. I love that because that's the calling, right?
That's the calling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't put us in niche markets, folks. When he clocks you on the head, he makes it so big it feels unattainable. But he doesn't do that. He tells you go out there and do this because he didn't have one disciple. He had 12, and they all had aptitude in something. And
I will tell you that when I chased that almighty dollar to build that business, the first one I was trying to build, I'll admit, I stopped and I looked up and I said, Lord, I said, maybe I'm missing the signs or something. I said, if you're putting the signs right in front of me, you got to remember I'm a guy and I don't see things that are right in front of me. So you got to make it a little challenging for me because I felt like I was at one point not able to fulfill my calling or not sure how to. What was the best way?
right.
Until he came again and said, no, here you go. And, the book was from the time I knew I was going to write a book to the time it was published was 1 year to the day.
When you made this leap, tell me how people in your inner circle reacted. Tell the listeners how everybody reacted because there's a lot of people that are sitting on the edge of making their leap, and they have the 10,000 reasons why they shouldn't.
Yeah. Look, there's always going to be people who say, why are you doing that? Look, I've lost my home. What am I doing writing a book about money? I'm not perfect with money. I've been broke many times. I could tell you stories from the trading pit days that would scare most people. I'll be honest with you, Dave. I got to a point where I felt like everything and everybody was against me. Right? I spent 2 years chasing it one direction, not bringing any money in to support my family. And then I shift and I take another year. Now that's a lot of pressure. That's pressure on your family, pressure on my wife, and people saying, "Oh, look, you're a lion. You're living off of your wife," and that's not a great feeling. That I'm not supporting my family. It's not
Right.
a good feeling. I'm telling you. And so you get to that point where you feel that everything is against you, but the good Lord has still got your back.
Always.
And I read somewhere in the Bible at that time He said, when you feel that everything is against you, that is when you make the greatest breakthroughs. And I did. And I came home from a vacation out of the Jersey Shore for the first time in 10 years with all of our family members together. And I sat down in my chair and I didn't get up for 3 months. And I just wrote the book and then rewrote it and then rewrote it, and until it got to where I liked it. And then dummy me finally spoke up to my publicist when everything was said and done and we were ready to publish and everything. And I did the recording. I did the audio, which isn't out yet. And I said, I'm going to add an extra bonus chapter for the audio. And my publicist is like, she's like, yeah, I love that. And it's going in the book too. And I'm like, oh, no, now I got to write another chapter. But, it was important to write another chapter. I needed to sum up the book, right? Which I didn't do in what I thought was the original final chapter.
So, have you written the last chapter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's in the book. It's in it. That's available now, and it's on the audio, which is not out yet, but that will be coming. It's being edited. But yeah, Dave, there was definitely a time where I felt that I was all alone, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't change my direction. I couldn't go out and get a job and I'll get back to this. I was called. When you get called, it's not, hey, here's a good idea. When you get called, you don't have a choice. It's a mission.
Yeah.
And it's a great mission. I mean, it introduced me to some amazing people. And through those people, getting to know you. And guess whose publicist I used?
Yeah.
Yours.
Yeah, well, I got to help with the book and stuff. I'm not going to say any of that stuff, but it's been an absolute, it's such an honor when somebody says, "Can you help?" It's almost just to be a little bit flip here, but it's almost like Bill saying, "Hey, Dave, come to the store and help me buy some underwear." Yeah. It's that intimate. I mean, because it's when you start. Those of you that have written understand this. Even if you've just written an article, hey, listen, it's no different than turning in a book report your sophomore year in high school. You put your time and effort into something, and then you have to turn it in. You feel naked when you turn it in because now somebody's going to judge it, and they're going to look at it, and they're going to give you a suggestion. They're going to go through all of these things, and you've got to learn how to take that. And sometimes you got to sit down a little bit and go, "Oh, that hurt."
You just realize you just put yourself out there for the whole world to criticize you.
That's why people made God made people like Susie.
Yeah.
Because she's so good at that.
Fantastic. I mean, look, if you're right. Writing a book was like going into a parallel world. When I came out of writing the book, I kind of looked up and I said, where am I? What have I missed? Who have I not been in touch with? I was, like I said, I did that 3 months straight and I was just lost in a different world. You're just constantly thinking about it. But I'll tell you one thing, Dave, and you'll probably agree to this. The easiest part of writing a book is writing the book.
Yeah.
It's everything afterwards that's a challenge.
It's complex, isn't it?
It's complex. It's do it the right way. I'm not a big believer of going to Amazon and self-publishing. I've interviewed many people when I had my radio show that had books, and I read many of them. I've barely finished any of them because they're not proofread. They're not edited. They're not put in the right forms. Look, you might write a book and change chapters. Chapter 8 might now be chapter 1.
So talk to me along those lines when you talk about proofreading. Some people will say, let's play counterpoint here. Okay, Bill, I know you've got some life experiences. You've had some failures, which gives you credibility. You've written a book. You want me to change my mindset on money, but I have a financial counselor, financial advisor. So I don't need your book?
I would suggest that if you have a financial advisor and you don't understand what you're investing in and what you're investing for, you better read my book. I talk about how to find a financial advisor. I'll be honest with you, there aren't many good ones. There aren't.
Listen to Bill, folks. Listen to Bill.
Advisors are trained by the company that they're with, and each company has its own agenda. You know, one's a finance company, another one's an insurance company. They'll tell you they do both. They don't. They might do both, but they don't understand both.
And they don't do one of them. They don't do very well.
They don't do well. And you know, and here's another thing. In my book, I said, when a financial comes up to you and says, I have some great ideas for you, run. A financial advisor should come up to you and say, what is it you're looking to accomplish? Okay, then let's talk about how we're going to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we said, even writing a book, you work backwards, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you work backwards to come to where now I know where to start. And I guarantee you, most people won't understand. People don't even understand what the difference between a mutual fund and ETF or investing in stocks. They think they're led to believe that investing in mutual funds is less risky than investing in stocks. A mutual fund is made up of stocks. It is just as risky.
It's all stocks.
In the same
it's all
market.
It's all tied to the market. That's right.
So this is marketing. Okay, this is how we've been marketed, and we, like I said, we get trained from a very young age, and to believing certain things in certain ways, and you know, because nobody talks about money, it's just it makes it very easy to be taken advantage of. If you don't understand your money, you don't control it.
That's
I can take it from you all day long.
That's right. Tell us how to get your book.
Right now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, you can look it up. Just Bill Haase, Our Mindset on Money.
Right. Haase with 2 A's and an S and an E. It probably goes right there. And
yes. You can go to www.billhaase.com and it'll take you to my website where you can buy it from there as well. And the website's going to have more information, and we're going to have more things on the website that can help people.
Do me a favor. Add a little thing on the front of your website that just says Matthew 6:24.
Let me write that down.
I think that's a great lead in. I wish I'd have had that a little bit sooner when you were in the midst of all this. It's perfect actually, because it relieves you of the burden so you can focus on what's important, and that's huge. So what's next, Bill?
Well, we're going to start a podcast, and I'm going to bring specialists on that we're going to dive deeper into what's in the book. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into it to help people understand a little bit more clearly. That actually is going to write the second book.
Okay.
Through all these interviews.
Perfect.
But the reality is I've got people tugging on my shoulder I need to write about cryptocurrency. I need to write about marketing. I would love to tear marketing apart. I'm not going to make a lot of friends if I write that book.
Sure.
But it is something I want to do. There's a number of ideas, and I'm really excited about taking hold of them and writing these books. Folks, I'm 64 years old. I'm not going to retire. I'm on a mission still. I have more to do. I have more to serve.
Tell me a little bit about your veteran passion, and then I'll throw a little plug in here, because this is real. That, people that haven't served in the military, I was telling Bill before we started, I said, when you sign up as an enlisted person, I said, when you get your first paycheck, you're qualified for every government assistance program out there imaginable. So you go to work, you defend our nation, and your wife takes her food stamps to the store and buys peanut butter. So.
Yeah, look, that's perpetual in every aspect of the military that I've been involved with. My uncle was a retired colonel in the Marines. My cousin was an F-14 pilot. My other cousin was a sergeant in the Marines. I've always been tied to the military, but for some reason the calling really gravitates me towards the military. Trying to help even with the recruits, with those moving from military to civilian life. Biggest fear is finance, and it makes sense. Helping the spouses that remain home while their better halves, or other halves, I should say, go overseas to fight, and they have to deal with the finances. And guess what? If your husband or your wife is at home while you're overseas, I guarantee you that person doesn't want you to come home to a pile of bills and no money in the bank account, right? So let's help that out. Let's help the Gold Star families that have lost a family member and maybe who was in charge of the finances. Let's help wounded warriors. Look at what they have to deal with financially, and let's help veterans. There's just so many people you can help and we can reach. With this book, that's what I look for. I look for opportunities to reach large numbers of people, help as many people as possible. Said this many times, and my team knows this very well about me. I'd be okay if I sold 1,000 books to help one person, but if I could sell one book and help 1,000 people, that's when I've won.
Right.
That's what's important.
That's right.
Team.
Unless you write Harry Potter, you're not going to make a living on a book.
No.
The book is the platform. The book is gosh, I want more of what Bill's selling, and you get the book because you get all of it. You get all that hard work that you talked about, all that mesmerizing out-of-body experience that you're pouring onto a piece of paper and doing that type of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
and the fun part is being able to get out and like with you and here and to share it and spread the word. Because Dave, this isn't about money. This book is not about it's funny, right? It's a book about money, but it's not about money.
Right. That's right. It's about discipline.
It's been proven that when you go into a business and you teach employees how to be financially literate, productivity goes up, they're healthier, they stay longer, they're happier people.
Mm-hmm.
I know a couple that have been doing it for 30 years in Denver, and they said it's amazing to see what can happen. So my goal is just to reach bigger, larger groups. I'll be working with the Salvation Army. Billy Dorsey, a friend of mine, Grammy Award-winning songwriter, has a program there.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do some stuff there. I'm working with a gentleman on the national board of community colleges, so I'll get to all 1,400 community colleges.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
Homeschooling, archdiocese. We have a lot of places to go, and that's just here in America. And I've got my friend who wants me to start putting this book out in Japan. So it's endless opportunity, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready to go.
Can people send you a note from your website? You got an email or something that can send you a note? Yeah, if I'm the school district down in South Florida and I want Bill to come and talk to us, I mean, how do we do that?
Yeah, they can either go through the website, BillHaase.com. There'll be a way to do that, but reach out to Bill at BillHaase.com. That's a direct email to me. But the website will have info at Money Mindset Media, which is my media company for the publishing of the book.
Great. It's a beautiful thing. Well, my friend, when we come to the end of these things, I usually give you a minute to give us these big, deep last words of wisdom for people to kind of take away to wrap all this up, because this has been great. It's been easy. I think we started a little early. This has been an easy hour. So,
and thank you for having me on and being able to share my passion and my calling. Look, like the book says, our mindset on money is easy to control, so why don't we? I promise you, if you take control of your money, I promise you, you will live a better life. You will be happier. You will be healthier. You will have less worries. You will enjoy things you never enjoyed before. I go back to remembering when we go out to dinner after college with friends, and I feared going out to dinner because I couldn't afford it.
mm-hmm.
And, so I would have a salad and a glass of water, and they'd have steak and lobster, right? And then the bill would come and they'd say, oh, let's just split it 5 ways. Well, did you have any fun at that dinner? No, you didn't. You didn't enjoy the meal. You didn't enjoy the company. All you could think about was the money. Take control of money and enjoy those times. The simple times. The simple things. It can be accomplished. That is where happiness lies.
Yeah.
It's in my mind.
Amen. I so agree. You're the best, Bill. Hey, folks, as promised, Kangaroo Leader moving out and moving forward, 64 years old, not a bone of stop in his body, and making a difference. When I raised my kids, the one thing that they'll tell you that I said constantly was just make a difference in a positive way every day, even if it's just in a small, simple way. So, just keep moving forward. So as we move forward, Bill moves forward, reach out, get his stuff.